For those of you that are here, thank you so much for joining us on this Thursday morning to the final sustainability coffee chat of the fall semester. Don't worry, we'll have plenty more coming up in the spring semester, just working on topics and speakers for those sessions. For those of you who have not joined a coffee chat before, these are somewhat informal sessions where we try to just get folks together who are interested in different sustainability and climate related topics. We like this to be pretty conversational and informal. We'll generally start with some thoughts from a couple of speakers and then just move into some informal discussion. We really just want this to be a conversation. And today we are talking about food security on campus or food insecurity. I think this is a hot topic, especially for our students. And I'm always hearing kind of mixed messages. Are we in a food desert on campus? Are we not? So I think this will be interesting to jump in today. And we do have a student on our panel, so having that student perspective, I think will be great. So let's introduce our speakers. All right, so our speakers today, we have Dr. Michael Boland. He's professor in ag and food business management, and he also coordinates that major. We also have Priscilla Bundy, who is an undergraduate, or is it Bunday, Priscilla?
Bunday, yeah.
Bunday. Okay, my apologies. Priscilla Bunday is an undergrad student, member of our food recovery network, which is an amazing student org doing great work on campus. And we may or may not have Jenny Breen, who is a faculty in culinary nutrition. She's a food educator. She's a chef. Jenny, do we have you here with us? Okay, it's not looking good. So we're going to move forward with Dr. Boland and Priscilla. Um, Dr. Boland, I'm going to give you the first speaking spot. So each speaker take maybe about 10 minutes or so, kind of share what you do, your thoughts in this space, kind of where your work is at relating to food security, and then we will have some time for discussion. So you can go ahead and share the screen if you have visuals. Take it away.
Well, good morning. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm down at the Minneapolis Convention Center. I've got a group of students here for the Minnesota Ag and Food Summit. And originally I had this came on my calendar for 5 p.m. today, but I saw when the calendar invite came out, it was for an Eastern European time zone. So I kind of
Oh,
scrambled a bit this morning. So I don't have any slides or anything, but um, uh, I teach several classes here at the university on the St. Paul campus. I also teach a graduate level food uh, agribusiness class, which is almost 60 students, which is a large graduate class. And I've had the opportunity to do quite a bit of work overseas. I've worked in more than 100 countries. It seems like a lot, but many countries are islands. You can drive across West Africa and go through 5 countries in 3 days. So when I think about this topic, a lot of times people get focused on what I call the grocery store phenomenon. That on the St. Paul campus, we don't have a grocery store, for example, close by or within close walking distance. So the same is true in East and West Bank. And so people get worried because we don't have a grocery store. And so as I tell people as an economist, when you think about I worked at a grocery store for 4 years in high school, and you just think about what's the main cost of putting together a retail grocery store? Well, it's going to be land and the price of land, and because people drive to stores typically, and so at least in the U.S. And so you look at where you could possibly put a grocery store and the cost of land for a parking lot in a building near any of the three urban campuses, and it's just not going to be it's just cost prohibitive, especially in an industry where you might be lucky to make a 1% return to your bottom line. Um, so then I said, okay, but people still eat, right? They're still healthy and they're still getting food. So, people take buses to go grocery shop, they carpool, they do a number of things. And then you've got the small uh, drugstore type, what I used to call it the kid drugstore, but places where people get food as well. So on the food insecurity issue, we do have choices around us. Um, there are many things. If you look at Dinkytown and West Bank, St. Paul campus probably got the most trouble, but the Hampton Food Cooperative which used to be next to campus, has moved off campus now. But there are options for people to get there. So um, So I think as we think about this food insecurity problem, access to food, I don't think is a huge issue. Now, types of food, if you want organic or certain types of things that may be more difficult to get to easily. So from that standpoint, we have that food access, um, but it's not convenient for everybody, probably, especially if you're living in dorms and things. So um, when you think about food security overall, it's certainly a bigger issue than in other countries than here. So, you start looking at Central America or you look at sub-Saharan African countries. And so in those countries, they have to subsidize the price of food because many things are made from wheat-based products and they don't produce wheat. And so the government buys large stocks of wheat and then subsidizes the cost of that wheat so people can make flour tortillas or maize tortillas in the case of food grade corn, um, and other type things. So um, our needs here in the United States and in Minnesota, yes, we can draw maps and find food deserts where you don't have close access to food, but at least we've got options. Um, and so maybe I'll stop there. It's going to be easier to have this conversation, I think, with questions from people in the Q&A type format, and instead of having me wandering around here. So I'll stop right there, and at some point when it's time for a Q&A, we can talk about whatever the group would like to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I mean, I think, we've got kind of a small group today. I think we can just move into some Q&A now for a bit and then hear from Priscilla. I think that works okay. Cassidy.
Hi, good morning. I thought it'd be easier just to verbally talk about my question rather than write it in the chat. Um, I'm of late I've been learning more about how we'll just keep it local, like Minnesota crops. Um, there's research being done on how crops can be used for purposes other than food. So maybe creating biofuel, sustainable aviation fuel, other types of purposes, all which have like a good end, like an end goal, right, for climate type reasons. But I'm wondering, like, how much do you know, anyways, do those types of projects interfere with production of food, right? Because if we're using
Yeah,
crops for food versus, I mean, for fuel instead of food, does that increase food desert?
yeah. So that's a great question. In fact, 10, 15, if you were down here, you'd hear more about that. Um, so what people are really excited about right now is the opportunity to make aviation fuels probably the lowest hanging fruit from things like restaurant grease, soy oils, and so forth. And so green diesel or sustainable diesel is a big issue. We've seen, I think, 6 new soy crushing plants being built in the upper Midwest to handle to crush soybeans to make soybean oil as one of the byproducts and co-products. And then that would be it's relatively straightforward. This is not like corn ethanol going into another fuel. Um, Making green diesel is a pretty straightforward process. So um, if we move that land into producing more soybeans or sunflower oil or canola, whatever the sources of oil are to make the green diesel, um, the logical question is, well, what was that land being used for before? It was supposed to be being used to make soybeans, and we were exporting those to China. So given the results of the presidential election yesterday and the potential for high tariffs, it's highly likely if those go forward that China's not going to buy our soybeans anyhow. They're going to buy from Brazil and Argentina. So from that standpoint, people would probably say, well, we're just replacing what used to be an export market for the crops that came off that land. We're producing that's a renewable something in the form of green diesel. So I don't think people are necessarily worried about that. The bigger issue is what do you do with the soybean meal that's coming as a co-product, and so that's typically an animal feed. And so with the declining water supply in the Ogallala Aquifer and in the Nebraska Panhandle and western Kansas, many people speculate that cattle production will probably move closer to Minnesota, Iowa, eastern Nebraska to use that soybean meal. And so to your point, no one that I know of right now from the agriculture economists are saying that we're displacing crops, land that was being used for vegetable and food production with something else. It's probably going to come out of land that was being used to export soybeans, if you will, to China. that are now going to be used for producing sustainable diesel. Keep in mind, we're never going to produce 100% sustainable diesel. The entire demand in California, for example, I've seen some data that says that if you were to take every gallon of diesel fuel that's used in California alone, all the land in the United States available for farmland couldn't even produce enough soybean oil or canola oil to satisfy that demand. So we're not talking about overnight flipping a switch and going to non uh, diesel fuel being made from traditional sources. We're just talking about trying to do it in higher value things like aviation fuel or things like that.
That was a great question, Cassidy. It ties into one of our previous chats when we were hearing from some local farmers. You were probably there. Um, any other questions for Michael right now? Okay, well, let's hear from Priscilla, and then once we have kind of our both of our perspectives here, we can maybe open up into a larger discussion. Priscilla, take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. So my name is Priscilla Bunday. I'm a current senior at the university. I'm studying computer science and food science. So I've been involved with Food Recovery Network since my freshman year. Been working as co-president and president since sophomore year. So I've gotten to see a lot of the work that we've been doing. I've actually worked with Jenny previously on some stuff for Food Recovery Network. So it's kind of exciting to connect with her for that again now. But if you haven't heard about Food Recovery Network, we mostly focus on getting food from the dining halls, nutritious U pantry, and a couple different sources across campus. We have students come and pick up that food, and then we'll take that to Loaves and Fishes, which is a food shelter based in St. Paul. It's only about 6 minutes from Como. It's right down, right off 15th Avenue in Casota. So it's very close, but it's a very student-led effort. So yeah, I've seen a lot of the food insecurity stuff from that perspective of rescuing food from the nutritious U pantry, which I know serves a lot of food insecure students on campus. That is mostly based out of Kaufman, and they work every 2 weeks. So students can just go get bags of grains and fresh produce from that. Um, but I have a lot of friends as well that have faced food insecurity. They go to the nutritious U pantry. So it's very interesting. I know food insecurity is a very hot topic. It's something I'm interested in with my research in school as well. But it's a very complex thing to deal with, and I know there's a very wide demographic of people at the university specifically too that all have different ways that they deal with this. I'm glad that Food Recovery Network's been able to do some work with that and redistribute this food to Loaves and Fishes, because they're able to get that food out more broadly throughout the Twin Cities as well, and not even just on campus. But we normally rescue about 500 to 600 pounds every 2 weeks, 300 pounds a week. So it's a pretty big impact just coming off of campus. And there's definitely a lot of food that is being wasted right now and a lot of students that can use that. So it's been great to see that effort redirected. And it's something I know Office of Sustainability and some other groups on campus we've been working very closely with. Yeah, that's just a little bit of background from the perspective I have on what's going on with food insecurity here.
Priscilla, thank you. It's something that I noticed earlier this week. I was in the student union on Tuesday, and I saw a really long line of students, and I thought, oh, maybe there's a voting opportunity in Kaufman that I wasn't aware of. And I thought for sure that's what this is. And then as I was looking around, I saw a line that said, I think it was Nutritious You, food pantry. And I thought, all of these students are here waiting for food. And that kind of, it hit me a little bit like, this is something real that our students are taking real yeah, Michael said he saw the same line too, taking real advantage of. And I knew that that program existed, but I hadn't really come in contact with it face to face. And it was just kind of a moment of realization of like, this is a real issue for some of our students in certain populations. And I was very grateful that Nutritious You exists and that students are taking advantage of it. That's lovely to see. But But I was a little bit surprised to see students waiting in this really long line um, for food.
Yeah, and that's one interesting thing for me too, because I've been involved in this since freshman year. So Nutritious U Pantry has been one of our longest running partners as far as where we get food on campus, because it's been since COVID that really interrupted our recoveries from the dining hall. So a lot of my effort has been restarting that. But Nutritious U Pantry has always been one that we've been doing recoveries from, and I think it's really blown up since when I started freshman year. They have a much bigger location. Like previously, they used to be on the second floor of Kaufman and kind of just a random corner. It's hard to find. Like not a lot of people I feel like knew about it compared to what it is now. And I think it's really amazing that there are a lot of students who are able to access this opportunity now as well. And working with them and seeing what food there is to recover, like how many people are able to come and actually use the produce that they're buying and they're producing. I know they get some of their prudence produce from some students groups as well sometimes. So it's just cool to see that connection, to see how students are giving to that as well as taking the opportunities that they have access to.
Yeah,
I
it's
think it's,
definitely.
I've been a long-term volunteer at, I still call it Dorothy Day in St. Paul, but it's Catholic Charities Higher Ed ground. On Tuesday mornings, at the start of the month, we might feed 200 people, and as their benefits run out in the month, we might feed 250 on a given morning. But there's a number of ways that we source food, so we're able to get through USDA programs. But to your point, there's food that's gleaned, if you will, or donated, and so it's a lot of work to manage all the expiration dates and all the things that you've got there. But we're doing a better job. Before COVID, the volunteer, we weren't able to do a hot meal down there. Now we can, and so the overall nutrition in the program has gone up. The old days of making sandwiches and cereal or whatever we had in hand in the mornings have now been replaced by hot meals, and there tends to be a protein, a starch, a vegetable, a fruit. So they're much more balanced meals in the morning. And so I think to your point, I agree with you. We've come a long way in terms of how we're handling certain programs. There's a question up there about the role of co-op. So you are right. We've seen several rural grocery stores. When they couldn't find a buyer, they've been reincorporated as a cooperative. The University Center for Cooperatives at the University of Wisconsin had a project to do some work with these. Some of these are redone as worker cooperatives, owned by employees, similar with the Hub Bicycle Co-op here on your West Bank. Some are employee owned, so those are different. Employee owned would be more like Lund's Byerly's or Nolan's or some of the other grocery store chains in town. And then some of these are bought by other cooperatives, and this just becomes one of their business lines, if you will. So we do have a problem with, as rural grocery store owners retire, those are just like their family farm, if you will. That grocery store may be on a second generation, and a third generation doesn't want to run that grocery store. And so, what do you do with that square foot, that old store? Up in Grand Marais, my family's got a place northeast Minnesota, but one of the grocery stores in town was what the owner gave it to his employees. Essentially, there's tax benefits of doing that, but now this become an employee-owned store. So we're seeing a number of different models in rural areas as people try to deal with this issue with grocery stores that are looking at going out of business. That's a great question. Good point to bring out.
How could that be done? And Priscilla, I love your thoughts on this too. What other models of a grocery store do you think students would want?
I think that I teach a class in cooperatives on Monday nights. And so as part of that, I take them often on visits. And so this fall, one of our visits was up to the Hampton Food Cooperative, which used to be the food co-op on the St. Paul campus. And so we spent the whole class time. I rented a bus and drove it's only maybe 12 blocks. But they did a wonderful job just showing us what they had done with this old building, how they remodeled it, what they were doing, how they were being very responsive to the members. And there are students from St. Paul campus who belong there. There's a volunteer aspect of it, so you work a couple hours a month. And they've got hot soups. They're very well known for their soups. They've got a part of the store that's set up to be student budget friendly and things the students might want, sandwiches and soups. And then they've got older people that live around that area. So, and then they're doing a number of things in the community. So the food co-op board talked about the things they're doing in the community, which includes the housing co-ops in the St. Paul campus. So the things they're doing to be responsive to their members, some of whom are students. So I do think those models resonate with a certain type of student. I generally have 30 students a year in my class in the fall, and we do a lot of those type visits just to make them aware of these options and things in their community. And a lot of these food co-ops have got reciprocity agreements. So I belong to a couple different food co-ops, and so if you make them aware of other food co-ops you belong to, you can still benefit from shopping at that food co-op even though you're not a member.
So Cassidy, oh, I was just going to highlight your comment in the chat, but I saw you raise your hand. So there you go.
Yeah, so yeah, I did post something in the chat regarding Seward Co-op, and I don't know if this is 100% accurate. I may have even gotten the co-op wrong, but I heard that, so let's just say it was Seward put up a location and area, knowing 100% going into this that they would be losing money, but it does align with their values to be providing, healthy food in areas where there are healthy food deserts, such as pockets of, Minneapolis and I mean everywhere, whether it's especially some of the like poor areas of urban areas, but then also rural areas too. I used to live on a farm in Wisconsin, and you had to drive quite a long ways to get to any grocery store. But I guess one of the things I wanted to ask about is the stigma around food insecurity and what we could be doing better to break down those barriers of stigma or offer food where I mean, you'd mentioned like the long line at Kaufman, which I think is so great that people, are able to utilize these resources, but some people may choose not to stand in a line out of a sense of like the stigma of it or a sense of pride or shame. I mean, I'm just like using words that are coming to the top of my mind because we know that there's still stigma around not having money to buy just our basic needs. So I'm wondering what we could be doing better around that.
Yeah, I will say, like, I grew up food insecure as well, and I faced that stigma most of my childhood, especially growing up in a very wealthy area. And I know that's something that students still face, and it's something I've talked to the Nutritious You leaders about because that's definitely something people will say when they're coming there. It's scary. Partially like it's scary not having food, but it's also scary having to go and get help as well as being seen by other people as having to do that as well. Um, I know it is hard to kind of break that barrier. I think it has been getting better, at least the advertisement for it. It's not only marketed to people who like don't have access to food. It's just anyone who wants any healthy food for free as well. So it's not, I think they're trying to market a little bit more so like it's not just people who can't afford food, it's for everyone. It's an access for all students. This is something everyone should have the ability to get as well. And I think the more people access it, the longer the lines are as well. Like that opens up the awareness of it, that it's not something that you should be ashamed of doing. But there is definitely a lot of work. I'm not entirely sure if it's something that we can educate freshmen about more so when they come into school or things like that. I didn't really hear about it when I was a freshman coming in. I'm not sure if they do more education regarding that nowadays. Um, but that's potentially an avenue. I know it's kind of up to funding of what they're able to do as well. I'm not really sure who would necessarily put on the hat and be in charge of trying to lead an initiative like that, but it's definitely an issue and it's something that should be addressed. But I'm hopeful that students are taking opportunities from it and that something that people are growing from as well on campus.
Hi everyone, this is Carmen Onerheim, who runs Introduce So wearing lots of hats, many including one of them. Is it okay to chime in about kind of what we've been up to lately?
Please
This
take
is
as
like
much time
a
as
good
you'd
time.
like. Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, and a huge shout out to everyone for, being involved locally, and especially on campus. Shout out to Priscilla and the Food Recovery Network. Yeah, I'd say what we have been working on lately has been really expanding as much as we can within our current limits. And so, like you said before, it was in kind of a, long hallway space. And when I came, we were able to essentially like quadruple the pantry in terms of like how much food people get, how often they can come. So double the amount of food. You can now come twice per month. So really, really proud of that. But again, like speaking to the idea of stigma and shame and things that people feel, what we can do right now is really just make this a very student-centered, really welcoming space. And I think we're doing a decent job of that based on like evaluation results, survey results, things like playing music that people like and, having chairs out so people don't have to stand in line. This is the first year we've had student staff run the pantry with me, not just like one student. We actually have like a group of 12 students who are staffing this pantry, as well as over 100 volunteers who come help out throughout the week. And yeah, as you mentioned, Priscilla, we have shifted the marketing from, are you having trouble affording food, which is kind of our definition that we're running with for food insecurity, not just access, but can you afford food? And we're shifting from that to just like, we want to make sure everyone's welcome, especially with some of the food we get. We need to be open to everybody, based on our funding. No one's turned away, but we do tend to do more strategic marketing to folks we know who are lower income. So we reach out to certain, cultural groups and communities within campus that we know statistically from, recent surveys have higher rates of food insecurity. So it's kind of a balance. We want to get the word out there to everyone, but we know we consistently serve, about 2,000, we have about 2,000 or so visits every month. So it's 100 people an hour. And while we also want to get the word out, we aren't able to expand a whole lot yet. We kind of do this in scaffold. So like every semester, we get, say, a new fridge, a new freezer. We've loved this new location, but I'll share just really briefly, and I'll stop about our next. Thanks, Carly, for putting the web page on there. One thing we're working on now is really bigger picture planning. There's a legislative request out right now, all about the student experience, because we know not every legislative request for the U gets funded. Sometimes it's tricky to get what we're specific request millions of dollars for basic needs and for mental health and things that really center students' experience on campus that help their well-being and help them stay in school. So we'll see what happens with that. But also we're working with the different student union teams. So I'm here in St. Paul, looking to figure out something for St. Paul for hopefully next year. We have a space identified in West Bank, as well as our main area in Coffin in the student union. So we're working on some cool, really big picture planning, expansion, but it really is kind of gradual, do the best we can with what we have, grants. But anyway, that being said, I am always available for folks who have ideas or questions. And if you do on the webpage that Carly just listed there, our contact info is up. Like to share with any students that you work with. We would love to have them know that we're here for them and we care about them. I kind of rambled for quite a while there, but feel free to reach out with any questions if anyone has any.
No, thank you so much for chiming in and adding to this conversation. I'm so glad you're here. What other questions do folks have?
I suppose a question for Priscilla, like in the last few years, what have been like some of the things you're most proud of, or the great like successes you had, and where do you see the biggest challenges going forward?
Yeah, it's been a wild road. Some of the things I'm most proud about, as I said, like coming in, I came in right after COVID, so my freshman year is the first year that the U fully like came back for welcome week and everything. Um, but that meant that a lot of the dining hall, like our constant operations, our constant recoveries, everything had been very much interrupted by that. So we also had a shift from having Airmark as the campus's catering company over to Chartwell's. So a lot of the connections that we'd had previously as well, those had all been overturned during that process. So it's been a really big thing for me. I'm very, very proud of the work we've done to build connections with Chartwell. So we have since started doing regular recoveries from the dining halls again. So that started last year, and now we've set up a whole process where they can just enter recoveries in this form, and our team will get there the next morning and recover that food and get it to Loaves and Fishes. So we've been seeing a pretty constant stream of food from that. That's about like 200 pounds a week. Generally, which has been pretty amazing. So there's been that. There's also been a connections. Most of these are through Heidi Link. She has been an amazing contact with us and has really facilitated a lot of these opportunities with Chartwells. But we've been working with some different catering companies on campus as well, like D'Amico and Sons based in McNamara. So it's been really, really great to see the opportunities expand from not just the nutritious U pantry. Because freshman year, that was the only recoveries we were really doing. So we know that there is a lot of waste going on other places on campus. We've been trying to get into some of the different sports arenas, Huntington Bank Stadium, um, but I mean, part of the amazing thing about working with these people is also seeing the efforts that they're doing on their own as well. We did a tour of Huntington Bank Stadium, got to see a couple of the games, and like it was amazing to see how much food waste that the people that were working there were able to reduce just as they were doing their shifts. There really was not much for us to kind of gather from all of that and then redistribute. So it's great to see the efforts the U is putting in to address food sustainability. There's definitely a lot of work to go further from this. And one of the main struggles, I think, especially for being a student chapter, is just the lack of people to drive that food from campus to our food shelves. A lot of the students that we get every year are freshmen. We recruit a lot at the sustainability fair, which thank you to Carly for that. That's where we get a significant portion of our new volunteers every year. And if they're living in the dorms, they likely don't have their own car. So I think going forward, it's always a struggle having people who are available to do those short notice recoveries from dining halls the next days or drive that food. Loaves and Fishes is only open from 9 to 2:30, so it's a pretty tight window, especially with classes going on the day. So I know this is something that'll be a struggle going forward, just with this being a student-led group. But we're trying to get more funding, potentially get refrigeration space to use to store food overnight for when we have later in the day recoveries. Because previously, so my roommate and I were co-president for 2 years until she graduated, and we used to just take the excess food that we'd get from Nutritious U Pantry. I know one time, Karen, we had to recover a bunch of frozen burritos. We fit all those burritos into our freezer and our friends' freezers overnight until we could get it to the food shelf. So having our own freezer space is something that would be amazing for the future going forward, as well as more people dedicated to driving. But I'm proud of the work we've done. I'm proud of our students. It's been a significant impact, and just seeing the change in the amount of food we've been able to recover just these past 2 months alone compared to what we used to do my freshman year. It's been leaps and bounds, and there's a lot more to do, but it's been great so far.
The work you're doing is amazing, Priscilla. So thank you for doing what you do. Something else in the chat. Michael, no worries. You're a busy guy today. We appreciate you being here. Let's see. If you were speaking to faculty and staff at the U, what would you want them to know about food insecurity here? Good question, John.
This is Karin again from the pantry. I'd love to chime in. And we've done obviously a lot of work in this area, but one message I want to get out there is that this issue is not going away anytime soon. Looking at data from before COVID, it was easily about 1 in 5 or so students suffer from food insecurity. Numbers went down a little bit during COVID when more people went home to families, and by the time they had the survey, they were getting help at home. But now that we're back, the numbers just keep rising, and what we're able to do right now with our own programming is really so so limited in some ways. So just that we're excited to expand and work with president's office and various groups, but just to keep that in mind that like any student you might be working with could be having a hard time and trying to make ends meet. We hear stories all the time of students making really difficult decisions and compromising their values because they need to make things work and get through school. So just ask everybody, just be kind, of course, and mindful of what students might be going through, and that everyone's got something that they're working through.
So I have a quick question for whomever, maybe Priscilla, maybe others. In this space of getting nutritious, healthy food to our student population who are experiencing food insecurity, what is the dream? What do we hope that these programs look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And what are those barriers? Is it just funding? If so, we've got some creative minds here. Where can we look for other sources of funding? I'm wondering, like, what is the big picture goal here to get to a point where our students aren't experiencing food insecurity? I think that would be everyone's hope.
I'll have to put you on the spot, Karen, but I feel like this might be a good one for Nutritious You Pantry.
Karen, you're becoming an on the spot panelist, and I really appreciate it.
Oh no, all good. I don't want to take up too much time, but my vision is that this isn't a problem at all that we don't have food pantries. This is ridiculous that we have to do all these things that students can't afford school. And so our basic needs strategic planning that's been a campus-wide initiative now for years. We're focused on like getting students free things, helping them save money, and helping them get money. And a huge thing that some students can use is SNAP, food support through the government. Getting even $100, $200 for food is so much more dignified than having to go wait in line for an hour sometimes at our food pantry. So just getting people money. We like to use an analogy of a bathtub where a bathtub represents students' finances. We have a lot of faucets coming in, money coming in, if you will, like wages, savings, loans, that kind of thing, and then a lot of drains. And as a lot of us experience in this economy, the water runs out pretty fast. It's a tough economy, so anytime we can get more money flowing in or less money flowing out, it means students don't have to, seek out free food, emergency grants, things like that. So thinking really high level is, policy systems change, helping people just get money and helping them access as much financial aid as they can, things like that. But for right now, it's just a more robust, more dignified emergency food system that we're all trying to build here for students. And a lot of stuff in between, but my main dream is that this is something we don't even have to focus on, that we can just support students through school and help them, achieve their goals.
The goal would be to put that program out of business, which would be wonderful if that wasn't needed anymore.
Yeah, that's the plan. We'll see how it goes.
That would be great. And the cost of groceries, I know that I'm sure everyone on this call is feeling that or has noticed that. It's wild. It's the increases are pretty intense, and I know that it's tough enough on my own budget, and I can't imagine on a student budget what that is looking like. It's a tough time for our students. What other thoughts are people having? Any other questions? Something coming into the chat. Does anyone have any thoughts on how grants may be impacted in the next 12 months? The sorts of grants that we may be taking advantage of. Priscilla or Karen, are either of your programs grant funded?
So our funding mainly comes from Food Recovery Network National. So we do get
Okay.
grants from them. We don't have to apply for them. We get $300 a year from them as well, and then they'll have other external funders that'll provide grants to specific chapters. We're currently working on getting things set up to use student services fees and the student activities office funds as well. To get more funding, but that's something that's a work in progress. We haven't had that very set up in the past. So something I'm hoping to get set up this year before I leave and have our next admin members kind of on top of. But yeah, we don't apply any external outside of the U or Food Recovery Network.
I can chime in about the pantry. Oh, sorry, here's my video. We really developed kind of a blended and braided funding, different funding sources, because we know that things shift and change, and that can be really hard. So we're supported. It was just initially it was student service fees. Then we added in our foundation, like donations through the U of M Foundation. And recently I've been doing a lot of grant work. Most of it is just state level though, and with our current political landscape and legislative priorities, that seems fairly stable. There's certain grants we can get every year for things like equipment and supplies, and also food itself. So that's really exciting to have. The amounts might change, and it just depends on how Minnesota shakes out. I haven't read any political news today to get a break for everything, but depending on what Minnesota legislature looks like and what this new legislative session looks like, things might shift a little, but it's mostly fairly stable. We just know when to apply for certain things. And occasionally, like, we have surprises and new opportunities pop up that we might take advantage of. And one last area we use too is federal funding through a program called TFAP, Emergency Food Assistance Program. We can get a lot of free food there too. So I'm feeling pretty optimistic about these types of assistance for all kinds of food banks and food pantries across Minnesota. I can't speak to the next 12 months or 4 years of things nationally, but feeling hopeful for where we're at right now.
I'm glad to hear that. I thought the response might be a little bit more grim, so I'm glad that you're feeling confident, Karen. Any other thoughts or questions for Priscilla or our impromptu panelist, Karen from Nutritious You?
Hi,
Uh,
Margo. I'm a graduate student in the School of Public Health. I'm doing environmental health, but I've had interest in like food insecurity, and I've done like one study, which was really interesting to see. This is just a random, like I'm very new to this. This is just a random thought. I went to St. Kate's as an undergrad, and to combat food insecurity, they embedded meal point plans for students within their tuition. And that increased the amount of food that they can get. And this was specifically for commuter students because they were the ones who were kind of they had to pre-plan, and there was just hurdles and stuff, and I was one of them. And I felt like that plan was pretty nice, and that kind of helped us in some ways to just like help those with short-term needs of like food on campus. Is that something that people explore? I don't know if that's, I'm pretty sure you guys already have explored something similar to that, but just to toss that idea out there, I wanted to contribute to the conversation too.
I think it's a really interesting idea for dining services for and food co Chartwell's to explore. One thing they do offer is free money to use in the dining halls and retail spaces. You can get $40 per semester, so it's not much, but it's something to be able to share a meal, go back with friends. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. That is super interesting to me.
This is a time for creative thoughts and solutions, and if other institutions are doing interesting things, have some programs that we could learn from. I think that's fantastic. We have about 10 minutes left. Any other questions from folks? This has been a great discussion.
My next question would be, how do I get involved in this entire program, from what the Nutritious You is doing and what Priscilla's student organization is doing? Yeah.
Hi, Sigala. I can add you to our email list, and when you get an email, it'll just say, hey, here's when our next event is happening. When would you like to volunteer? You can also just stop by the pantry anytime we're open. If you just want to come check it out, hear about the other programs like the free meals, the food pantry on wheels in St. Paul. That's all on our website as well. So I would check out our website and just click on the volunteers button, and yeah, we'll get you on our list. I appreciate it.
Yes, I also have a mailing list if you want to sign up for that. I can get that link in here in just this moment. But if you're interested in volunteering, we do have regular recoveries from Nutritious You. If you do end up stopping by the Nutritious You pantry to help, we just pick up the food after it's done, so you can stick around and help load up the car from that. But yeah, if you have a car, that would be amazing as well.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, but I'll get the mailing list in for you, and then we'll send out a link for the volunteer sign up as well.
I will put it in the chat.
This is wonderful. And if anyone else on the call is interested in getting involved in either of these organizations, and you forget people's names or contacts, you can always email me and I can get you in touch with the right folks. But this is wonderful. We're making connections.
And thank you for hosting. Really appreciate it, Carly. Good to talk with all of you.
Thank you so much for stepping up and sharing information about Nutritious You. I think it's such an incredible program, and it's so good to see that students are taking advantage of it, even though I wish that they didn't have to. While I have a captive audience here, I'm going to do some shameless promotion for things that our office has coming up. If you will bear with me for just a second here, if I can get on the right tab, back to my slides. Here we are. Okay. So some of you are familiar with this. Some of you, maybe this is the first time you are seeing it, but if you are here because you have any sort of interest in climate, next week is a really big week for us for climate. November 14th, we are hosting our first, hopefully of many, we're hoping to do this on an annual basis, our first climate literacy teach-in. And this is going to be campus-wide on November 14th. We have over 20 different sessions that are being offered by a variety of different departments and areas on campus. We will have tours of our recycling center over in the Como area, tours of our main energy plant. We will have a breakfast kickoff session. We will have a midday lunch session that is going to be like a climate literacy 101. We'll have some evening sessions that are dedicated to the student audience. It's going to be exciting, and I would really appreciate it if folks would look into this, see if it's something of interest, and please share widely with anyone that you know that might be interested in the climate space. I am going to throw a link in the chat. There are multiple different events that you can register for. Some require registration, some do not. I would recommend all of them. I'm jealous that I can't be in about 10 places at the same time here. All right. So I'll toss in here really quick before people have to run. Okay, there's the link. Check it out. Like I mentioned, this is the last sustainability coffee chat of the fall semester, but keep an eye out on our website and our socials because we will be hosting them again monthly in the spring semester. All right, that is what I have for you today. Big thanks, Priscilla. Thanks to Karen as well and everyone else who joined us today. Have a great one.
Thank you.